Hi, I'm Wyatt Cash with CyberScoop and Scoop News Group, and today we're with Dan Sanden, Senior Principal Product Manager at Veritas. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So there has been a lot thrown at CISOs in 2020. How has 2020 changed the CISO's role from your point of view?
Well, one thing that I can see from protection angle when we interact with the backup executives that are working with our product, Net Backup and others, is we're seeing a lot more RFPs and actually C-level driven initiatives that have to do with ransomware resiliency and really getting into the recovery space and learning how a backup and recovery is there as the last line of defense to get environments back up and running when they are hit by ransomware. So we are seeing a lot more CISO involvement in the procurement process and the renewal process with all of our customers.
The next, I'd like to ask about workforces. You know, workforces are now so much more distributed than they were months ago. What has that taught security leaders when it comes to implementing security policies for their organizations?
Yeah, I think identity and access management is a big deal. We are seeing an uptick in requirements asking for multi-factor, asking for our solutions to support the multi-factor solution of their choice. And then not even just multi-factor authentication, we're also seeing requests for dual authorization or maker checker like technologies. So for instance, if it's a secure or a highly sensitive operation in the backup environment where they want to verify that there's two users that are approving a certain policy setup or maybe a deletion request of a backup to make sure that if one account is compromised, they're still getting a dual authorization approach and some of those more sensitive criteria. And that's something that's kind of brand new that we're starting to hear customers ask for beyond just MFA.
Well, IoT and 5G technologies continue to come online in the US, and that obviously means more tech being brought into organizations that require special treatment. With those improvements also comes some supply chain concerns, I suppose. How should we collectively handle these concerns while still trying to make sure we don't fall behind?
Yeah, on the 5G and IoT, I don't see a lot of that on our side with backup executives talking to us about the technologies they're bringing into place. But I am aware that there's a lot of authentication concerns with those new devices that are being used that may not have been used as prevalently as in the past. And obviously, we want to make sure that the protection on those systems and that our solutions can protect those from a recovery standpoint when needed if they're starting to be used for actual any kind of data storage and those kinds of things. So not hearing a lot on the procurement side, but definitely on making sure that we can support the backup environment and the recovery of those solutions if necessary.
And lastly, as cyber threats continue to grow in sophistication, organizations obviously face a persistent challenge in recruiting skilled cybersecurity professionals that are capable of protecting their systems against those threats and against malicious actors. How do we close those gaps that exist in the nation's current cybersecurity education and training landscape from your point of view?
Yeah, what we're doing on our side, we're trying to lower the logical attack vectors into the protection environment and the backup environment. And we do so from a pillar perspective. NIST has a lot of different pillars, for example, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We don't cover all those areas. Customers have a layered defense relative to protection, and we really focus on protect, detect, and recover. And so from those pillars perspective, the first thing we look at in the protection space is we got security controls. And so from an education perspective, we need to educate our customers on best practices relative to protection. And so making sure you've got the right authentication and role-based access implemented within your organization. Make sure you're doing data encryption in flight and in transit. There's recent ransomware trends where they're not only encrypting your data, they're actually stealing it and then bribing you saying they're going to make it public if you don't pay the ransom. And so having encryption at rest would render the data useless to the bad actor. Also, mutable and indelible storage, making sure from a data integrity standpoint, you've implemented a solution that doesn't allow your backup data to be modified and or deleted, and then just general solution hardening procedures. And that's in addition to the broader just normal things you would do, making sure your ports are shut down to only the ports that need to be open, and those kinds of things. So we've we've implemented those security procedures. We've got best practices to help our customers implement those, and so that's protection. On the other pillar, detect space, we are seeing customers that have gotten ransomware and have called us, and the first thing we find out is they're not protecting all their critical assets, and they don't have a backup for it. So it might be thought of, hey, my backups are good, but having a solution that can detect that your backups are actually being done and can monitor your production environments to make sure that your VMs that you need to be are actually being protected. That's a critical piece of detection. We have some malware detection solutions that are available that can supplement your existing cybersecurity endpoint detections in place. So we definitely recommend, from a best practices perspective, looking at those from a supplementing perspective. And then finally, one sore point that we see is recovery. And if you do have a large scale outage, which could be created from ransomware, just having a solution that can orchestrate and automate the recovery. So a lot of times we're hearing customers think about just detection in a vacuum when it comes to ransomware, but you really need to look at that broader spectrum to make sure that you're really resilient to ransomware and other bad actors.
Well, that's a great checklist of best practices. Dan Sanden, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you very much, Wyatt. It was a pleasure.